And we're live, everybody. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Goopplycast. We have grown. It was me and Roy last time, and now we have Tim and Matt back, and we're all doing this over Zoom. The power of technology right now during quarantine. It's really exciting. Anyways, we're going to talk today about the Epic Games lawsuit. So, to give you a little bit of background, Epic Games launched a Fortnite in-app payment system on both Apple and Google. It was rejected from Apple, and I think almost minutes after it was rejected from Apple, Epic Games filed a lawsuit, and then also filed a lawsuit against Google as well for them rejecting the app too, claiming their power is too strong, essentially,
That they have a monopoly.
over that they have a monopoly. That's a nice word to use.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of get into that. There's some developing news today. I'll turn it over to Roy for that. He's going to talk about the developing news that happened today.
Yeah, so Apple sent a letter to Epic Games, notice to Epic Games, basically telling them that they're going to cut off Epic's developer account tools, their developer tools necessary to create software on Apple platforms. They said, and quote, upon further review of the activity associated with your Apple Developer Program membership, we have identified several violations of the Apple Developer Program license agreement. Therefore, your Apple Developer Program account will be terminated if the violations set forth below are not cured within 14 days. If your membership is terminated, you may no longer submit apps to the App Store, and your apps still available for distribution will be removed. You will lose access to the following programs, technologies, and capabilities. And then it goes on to list all the SDKs, APIs, and whatnot that are associated. But yeah, I found this. I read it earlier in an article. I can't remember where I read it on, but I'm reading it now off of Pocket Now. They reported this according to this 4 hours ago. And yeah, so they have until August 28th to basically make Apple happy, or they're going to lose access.
So, in also updated to that, Epic Games has actually filed a additional court filing today, asking for a restraining order from any removal from the App Store today. Hasn't been heard yet, but it's still early. I mean, they do have a few days, so we could see more of that. But everything's turning so fast in this thing. So let's kind of just discuss, kind of the lawsuit and how it's kind of affecting who plays Fortnite. Anybody play Fortnite on here?
I've played it once or twice.
Okay, I don't play it either. You do play it or you don't, Tim?
I've played it once or twice just to try it out, but yeah.
Okay, so none of us are really, but this has been like an ongoing complaint, at least for Apple, all the way back to Spotify. Spotify has been very outspoken about Apple's developers and not allowing in-app payments and stuff like that. So obviously, Roy and I are both iPhone users, and I think you guys are both Google users.
I'm primarily a Google user, yeah.
Do you have an iPhone at all, or?
I do. I have an iPhone that I just use to kind of test and figure out how it works. It's not like my daily driver of phones, but I do have one. So I am also unable to download Fortnite right now.
Got it. So Roy and I both have Pixels too, Pixel 4s that we use also. But so Apple is often, pushed for only offering in-app payment. And Roy and I have talked about this, and we think that I get where developers are coming from. 30% commission fee is a lot to take from a developer, especially when you don't have that on Google. I don't know what Google's fees are, but
it's my understanding that Google's fees are also 30%. And I think that applies to in-app purchases similar to Apple's fees, but I'll actually just go on and double check to see if I can find it. But from what I've heard in like conversations, it seems like everybody charges 30%. So like Sony,
Yeah.
Nintendo, and everyone else.
Yeah. So it seems like a pretty flat thing across the board. One of the things that I noticed, uh, well, I know that Apple, if you've had the app on the store for a certain amount of time and you've generated a certain amount of income, I think it is, Apple will drop their fee, I think, to 15%.
I've heard that,
So
yeah.
almost half, which is good for developers who have strong platforms. But if you don't have a strong app and you don't generate a lot of revenue to try and keep things going, one of the other outspoken apps that have come up is, well, it happened during quarantine. And I think there was something else happening during the time too.
Was it
But
that email app? The
yeah, it
like
was email,
Hey?
hey.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were really outspoken too about it. And the developers were talking about it a lot because it didn't, they wouldn't allow them to do the third-party purchasing app, but some other email programs do. And the reason that some of the other email programs do is that they offer a free version as well. So Hey came back and offered a free version. Basically, you can keep your email address for 14 days, and then it automatically creates a new username for you. So you don't ever get, it's kind of useless.
Wow.
Because
That's
I mean,
convoluted.
yeah. So they kind of came back with that. And then obviously Spotify has been very outspoken about the extra fees because they are in competition with Apple over Apple Music. And obviously they have to charge more in order to maintain a profit, you know. So generally when you pay for Spotify on Apple Music or on iTunes at least, or the App Store, you usually pay a couple dollars more. At least that was the case back then. I haven't used Spotify in a while, so and I think I signed up on the website. But if you do sign up on the website, you get like $2 less.
One thing that confuses me is that I know like Amazon and some other companies can route customers out of their app that's on iOS and then to Safari, so like a web browser, and allow them to pay for stuff and then kick them back into the app. And
Yeah, so certain apps are allowed to use other payment methods, and I don't know exactly what the payment method is, but or what the apps are, but like some like readers and stuff like that can use third-party payment systems and stuff like that. So it's really kind of Apple's discretion, I think, is kind of what they're going for. But Roy and I talked a lot about this, and Apple is really, truly, honestly, I think the payment method system, I get both sides of it, but the payment thing is honestly there to protect the user in the long run. You know, I feel like, and I feel like Google does the same thing, is to protect people from, you know, other purchases. When you have a bad claim with the Apple payment system, you go to Apple customer support and Apple makes the determination whether you should get a refund or not. Not a third-party payment system. Like if you were to integrate PayPal into your app, for example, then you'd have to go to PayPal, and then PayPal would probably, you know, end it up there. And they want to keep the user experience positive on the iPhone.
which I think
feel
is
like.
fair because there's like Amazon payments, there's PayPal, there's Visa checkout. If all of these got integrated into the App Store, it would break Apple's convenience, I guess, that you pay for.
Exactly, and they want to be, you know, very positive rating of their devices and their ecosystem, and I think that's kind of the same of Google. Now, I do understand developers though, you know, that are coming out and trying to make a profit, and some developers, you know, don't have in-app payment systems. You know, for example, food-based services. You know, you pay through other app services.
And they're also ones that give you like a physical product and not a digital good.
Exactly. So I mean, I think, I mean, 30% is a lot too sometimes, but when I think about it too, I also think about you know, the cost that goes into making these developer tools. You know, I feel like there's a lot of, you know, I mean, you get you get the App Store, you get Xcode, which uses to make it. Google, you get Google Studio, and you get distribution to your apps as well. Now with Google, I think you can create your own App Store too. I think Amazon did that when they released their own version. I think Samsung has their own App Store as well.
Oh yeah, but you get Apple's kind of not complicated market, but you get a bunch of people who put in like apps that are going to be free, that are really low quality. Does Google review any apps that go on?
I don't think they do, and that's the other thing too, is Apple reviews every app.
Yeah.
And they have a team of people that review every app. Do you know, Tim, if anybody else if Google reviews their apps?
I don't know about Google or even Amazon, if either of them review apps. But I was also.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to bring up with Microsoft, what very, very similar situation going on with Microsoft is trying to release their game streaming service onto the App Store, and that got declined because Apple wants to go through and review each game that's available on there, but they don't do that for things like Netflix or other video streaming services, which is pretty much game streaming service is going to be like video streaming, just you're sending commands back out and back.
Mhm.
But it's a little bit different, but
it's different because people interact with the games kind of, but it's still a service where the owner of the service
is content, though.
Yeah, they just put on content. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and so Facebook came out recently too and talked about this. Facebook claimed that Google has, kind of ruined their business model kind of in some ways, but they've been trying to get Facebook games on the market for a long time. And Facebook games is basically a gaming system, but it got rejected earlier in the year, I think, because they couldn't use their in-app purchasing and stuff like that. And then ultimately Google rejected it, and I think rejected Microsoft's idea too, because you have games inside of your app, but Apple can't review the games.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. How they operate. So the game is actually, other developers can actually build games into it, and then release those games with the Facebook gaming one, at least. And so Facebook came out, I think it was earlier this month, and said they've released the Facebook games on iOS, but without games. So you can watch pretty much games in the gaming app.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the Congregate service?
Yeah.
I'm not.
I'm not.
So Congregate, as far as I'm aware, I could be off the mark with this. I thought it was something that you can download on a mobile device to get indie games, and I think GameStop owns it as one of their ways to get into game publishing. So I thought there was a Congregate app, and I thought it was also available on Google or something. And it sounds very similar to what Facebook is, which is just like a portal to have access to different games.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of exactly what Facebook Games is, back, what was that farming app that game?
Farmville.
Farmville. Everybody in their day was playing Farmville. And, and so it's kind of similar to that. Developers can build gamings around Facebook games and then distribute it through the app. But then again, Facebook can't review any of the apps. So essentially, they said no to that. Facebook also came out and tried to get Apple to lower said that basically they weren't going to charge any fee for certain companies to do their, profit things like sell gift cards and stuff like that in their app and stuff like that. And Facebook asked them to not collect any fees on it because Facebook wasn't collecting any fees. And essentially Apple came back and said no. And I think more or less that is all most likely because if they did that for them, everybody else is going to start flooding them with calls as well. So,
I guess the question is, do you guys think that Epic makes enough money to get a kind of special deal? Like if they make Apple enough money, do you think that it's
Fortnite's
fair
one of the
for
most
them to have?
popular games out there right now. I think that the potential for them to make enough money to, I don't know what you call them, get like a bulk rate from like a Costco type cut deal from
Yeah,
Apple.
like
I
some kind of
think
wholesale contract or
I
something.
think there's I say this a lot about a lot of things, but there's a lot of money to be made for both Apple and Epic in having Fortnite on iOS, especially with the way that mobile games are growing. Controller integrations that make it more accessible to play, being able to do something like that on Apple TV and stream it up to your computer or up to your television. There's a lot of money to be made, a lot of money, and I if Apple were to cut their, give them the 15% deal, Apple's still going to come away with a lot of money in the end. And I don't see it not being a win-win for everybody.
Well, and here's one of the things. So Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Amazon CEO, I can't remember what his name is.
Jeff Bezos.
No, not Amazon. Sorry,
Not
Google CEO.
Google. Oh.
Senor.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It's not Larry Page anymore. But anyways, they all testified against Congress, and to be honest, it was kind of a shit show thing because everybody kind of like they kept asking questions, and then they wouldn't wait for an answer because they were trying to answer, and then they would just come back and say, I'm reclaiming my time. But one of the things that I heard on there is, so Amazon Prime was kicked off of the Apple TV for a long time. Like there was a big holdout on joining the Apple TV app and stuff like that. And so there's a big fight over it, I think. But one of the things that they uncovered in their investigation is that Apple was giving a discount to Amazon for allowing them to keep their app on the App Store. And there was a lot of conversations that went back from even when Steve Jobs was there, and that we should, going back to when they denied their app, and stuff like that. And so Apple makes deals with developers, and obviously Amazon is one of them. But Amazon's a big company.
Yeah, there's millions of dollars at stake.
Yeah. So the Epic, I think, the Epic lawsuit obviously was planned, and it's a stunt, like it really is, because they submitted it knowing it was going to be rejected.
Yeah. And
then minutes or hours later they file a lawsuit. I mean, they were already ready for it. They've done this.
Yeah, and they also released that video. I don't know if you saw the video.
1980 Fortnite.
Yeah, that got released like instantly.
That was incredible. Like the fact that a company did a lawsuit publicity stunt video game tie-in, like I've never seen anything like that before in the gaming industry.
It was amazing.
Because it's like it's going to be on the news. Everybody knows about Fortnite. I remember seeing a video of it on some random news channel, like on YouTube, where they post the little segments that they have, and I was like, I think it was in New York, like a New York news channel was talking about it. And I was like, Fortnite being that popular is still something new to me, even though like I know it in the back of my mind, but still the fact that this is so much news and Epic is going to get so much publicity for it. It's crazy.
I have not seen this video. I'm going to have to go track this down and watch it.
I'll see if I can find it for you and link it. It was just a little tiny conversation like Epic is suing like Apple and Google. And I'm like, wow. They're actually talking about it out in the real world.
Yeah.
One of the things that hasn't been touched on is, they're suing Google over this 30%, but they can get around going through Google Play Store on Android. I mean, Android's so open source that you can have a third-party market on Android and not go through the Google Play Store. I mean, there are plenty of other third-party markets on Android.
Definitely. And I think that's why initially wasn't the filing of whatever they had, the lawsuit only for Apple?
Well, that's who they originally filed their lawsuit with, but then they started a lawsuit with Google. And to me, it's just, I don't think they have a leg to stand on either lawsuits, but on the Google end, there's a workaround for the Google Play Store. There's not really a workaround on the Apple side unless you have a jailbroken iPhone.
Yeah, the Google one is difficult for sure because they do have that. They do have the ability to sideload things to download other.
Yeah, and you can download
this
it from the
open.
web too. Because
Yeah.
I think Fortnite came out and said you can still. It's not available in the App Store, but you can still go to our website and download it. So that's very well possible that
One of
yeah,
their
I mean, it's going to be
arguments I've
hard.
heard is that they are claiming Google is being anti-competitive because what was their wording? It was whenever you do try to install an app that isn't from the Play Store, you have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to like get it installed into your system. Like, are you
jump
sure you
through
want to
a
install
hoop.
this
You
app?
jump through a
Are you
hoop.
sure it's secure? Like these aren't
Yeah.
secure.
No,
like,
there's a
you ruin
few
your
prompts,
phone.
Roy.
Well, the first time
And-
you
and-
install something not from the Play Store, you have to say that you're willing to install things from unknown sources, and then every time you download a new APK and you go to download it or go to install it, it's like, hey, this is from an unknown source. Are you sure you want to install this? And you say yes. So after the first time that you've done it, you only have to answer the prompt once.
What do you think that's like for kids using maybe their parents' phone or their own phones trying to install an app that will then ask them for money? Like, even if it's Fortnite, how do you think parents will feel about that?
As a
Like for
parent
us, we're just
myself,
like, yeah, whatever. I'll destroy this phone if something bad happens. I know how to fix it. But for I don't know other people who aren't as technologically savvy,
Well, I think it goes back to the experience you get, and I think again, Google and Apple want to commit to a positive experience, and that's why they discourage you from downloading third-party apps from a different unknown source. So for example, if you try to install an app on the Mac store too, and it's not, because on Mac you can actually download apps from a website. It doesn't have to be in the App Store. They do have the App Store, but you can download it from a website and log it on there. If it doesn't have a like a certification from Google, or excuse me, from Apple, then you have to go into the settings and you have to say, yes, I want to install this. I know it could harm my system.
and enter your password.
And then enter your password and prompt it. Now, what I'm wondering is and I haven't tried downloading Fortnite. I should have done this before on my iPhone, but I'm wondering if Google is doing the same thing, or if Fortnite is trying to do the same thing with iPhones. Because there is some other ways of getting there, or at least there was. I don't know if there
apps
still is.
onto an iPhone without going through the App Store. I've never heard of these ways. I would love to hear.
There was a Microsoft. Think of it. There was a Microsoft like beta testing site, and I think it actually shut. What is it called? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. But there was a Microsoft beta testing site. Like they have test flight for
Apple
beta
apps.
testing apps on the iPhone, and you can have up to, I think, 10,000 users. So they could actually set up a test flight, and then it doesn't get reviewed by Google. You can still add your own in-payment system in it, and you can download and have so many users on there. But
this is for getting like beta apps onto Apple.
Yes.
On the Apple devices,
for iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah, test flight's kind of like a little, almost like a beta app store. I mean, you don't have access to everything on there. You have to be accepted into the program, and then it shows up through the test flight app, and you press the download. You have a token. It's valid for, I think, like 90 days or something like that before it has to get renewed. So
it would be cumbersome if you're trying to run a business with like consistent access to an app.
Kind of. Well, have you heard of there's a third-party store you can get on an unjailbroken iPhone. It's called Alt Server or Alt Store, and you have to download an app to your Windows PC or your Mac called Alt Server, and every few days your phone has to be able to sync up to Alt Server, otherwise it stops working. It basically tricks your iPhone into thinking that you're a developer, and this is a developer tool on your phone. And the only thing that's available on there right now is Uncover, which is a jailbreak tool. If you have if your phone is jailbreakable under the Uncover, what versions work for Uncover. And the dude that made this alt store, he has a Game Boy emulator, an emulator that works for Game Boy Advance, N64, everything from GameCube older. And yeah, I mean, I've downloaded on my phone, I've used it, and all I have to do is sync with the alt server on my Mac or PC every 3 or 4 days or however long it is, and it'll continue to work. But it tricks your phone into thinking, or I mean, it doesn't trick it. It is a developer app, and it bypasses all of that because they think that you're a developer and you're testing an app.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's called Microsoft App Center. And it was called something else before, but you could essentially download third-party apps into the iPhone. I don't know that you can do it now. I'm trying to see because the last one.
What do you guys think of Epic Games calling Apple's hold on the App Store a monopoly when it's it's a App Store that's made by Apple, maintained by Apple, and for an Apple platform? Like, is it fair to call it a monopoly?
No,
personally, I think it's absurd. I mean,
I agree.
it's 100% made by Apple for Apple devices, and calling a monopoly and calling the Google Play Store a monopoly is, in my opinion, the most absurd claim that I've heard a company make against Apple.
Which I think is funny because we happen to live in absurd times where people can just say whatever they want to affect not political change, but social backlash, social momentum. Basically, I feel like what's the CEO of Epic? Is it Tim something?
I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
It does start with it. Sweeney, isn't it?
Yes.
Tim or Tom Sweeney. I feel like he is saying things that get people really upset, like monopolies just always just really just make people upset and they want to fight.
Nobody even likes the game. Let's face it.
Well, none of us are playing it, but we're talking about it because it's a big thing and it could change. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to go to court. I mean, Epic has already committed money to it and they're already going to do this.
The amount of money they're going to have to spend is going to be crazy.
And this could go on for years. Like, if we think that we're anywhere close to, this is going to be solved by the end of this year, it's not. Oh, no. Because Apple is going to fight through the teeth on this, I feel like. And then they're going to, even if it does it's going to get appealed, and it's going to get appealed. And, it's going to ultimately end up at the Supreme Court, I feel like, making a decision on it. Just because I feel like it. But I think one of the things that Apple has claimed is you come into our environment, you sign the terms and conditions, and you violated those terms and conditions. And that's why you're not being welcome to the App Store anymore. And I think
it's pretty cut and dry right there. You signed on knowing what was going to happen, and now you're going to get mad because we're enforcing what we told you we were going to enforce.
Right. Yeah. Which I think is that was Epic's plan. They're going to be like, we are trying to show that Apple has enough control to not allow competition. We have no path to sell things for the amount that we think is fair, and we think that they are charging way too much and they have a monopoly on the industry. So
it's a fair argument to say that Apple's charging too much. I mean, we can sit here and argue whether 30%'s, too much, or it's a fair price, or 20%'s more fair. That's a conversation I think is perfectly fine to have. Personally, I think 30%'s a pretty steep cut. I mean,
it is for a $1 trillion company. Like, I feel like, they did develop Apple Park, and Apple Park is a state-of-the-art thing. I mean, that's a lot of where money goes to is through their innovation and stuff like that. And they've recently, developed a new line of chips for the Mac, and stuff like that. So they're putting their money to good use, but I do feel like they could still do just a little less of that. I mean, why not make it everything? Why not make it 15% for everybody? Like, I mean, I think
certainly have the funds
15%, and they could still have a lot of money.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, you still charge the $99 fee to join the App Store. what if you put on a one-time fee to, submitting your app to the App Store too.
That's right.
And
So
then
there's like a
dropping.
$99 fee
Yeah,
to
so both.
become a developer for iOS, like to get like a license to
Yeah,
even
so
launch apps on it.
Yeah, so you can download Xcode for free. You don't need to have a developer. There's a free version of the developer. But if you want to submit an app to the App Store, you have to be able to you have to have the paid version of the developer platform, which is
Okay.
$99 a year. Essentially. They could charge, what, $25-$30 also or something on top of their apps, once, like a one-time fee when you submit a new app to the App Store.
Hmm. Go ahead. Sorry.
I see a lot of companies actually working well with it, and this is one of the apps that I also often talk about is Fantastical, and Fantastical is like an only iPhone based app, and they have a calendar app. It's basically the best calendar app on the App Store, best calendar app that would take on any Google Calendar, and they have a platform and they do a yearly subscription, and I pay for that yearly subscription on the App Store, and they do a good job at developing it. Some developers have made it. I feel like other developers could do the same thing. It takes a little bit of time to get there, but once you do, I feel like you could. And I feel like Apple could drop their fees just a little bit.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Epic also control or make the Unreal Engine that basically almost every mobile major game is made on these days?
The fact that Apple is cutting that is crazy. As part of their, we're going to ban Epic.
Because there's another game platform too that they were talking about, and I think that's what it is, and they're also banning that one because it's licensed under Epic. So other game developers that develop off that engine also are probably going to get banned as well, unless the courts step in and say,
oh yeah, the restraining thing, you can't do that quite yet.
Yeah. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that all, if that, comes out, because, even back to the way that, when the App Store was first created, Tim Cook always said that it was created to make a safe environment for users. And that's what Steve Jobs was all about. He wanted a App Store. He wanted a good user experience. And it was often his model that Apple doesn't, like, Google's done a lot of what Apple has done. iOS 14 introduced the app drawer. Android has had it for how many years? Android has had widgets on the home screen. Apple did widgets this year. Apple doesn't do things until they do it right, except for Apple Maps.
We're still waiting on that one.
Oh,
no, we got it. We got an apology letter from it. Tim Cook came out and said it didn't meet our expectations, and then Scott, who managed Apple's iOS software, actually stepped down after that, or was forced out. Still speculation on that, but yeah, I mean, Apple doesn't do anything till it does it right because of the experience that they want in the App Store, and I think
that's kind of why I think that the 30% for Apple, if it's not fair, it's approximately fair, because if Apple gives you like the best that they can possibly give you, they curate everything, they feature developers, they meticulously detail everything that they have. Google doesn't necessarily do that as much, and their App Store, I don't think they make as much money. Google's Play Store, I don't think it makes as much money as the App Store for that particular reason. So I think that if anyone was going to reduce the cost, so would I.
I mean, you make a good point. I can completely understand Apple having a fee to a certain extent. Of course, we're not in excess. Much more than I can understand Google charging. Like, if Google's charging 30%, just like Apple is, Google's ripping people off. Apple at least is putting forth the effort to ensure that the apps go through testing, are well maintained. There's a support staff that you could theoretically say that has to be funded, by what it takes care of.
Right.
What is Google?
They even have app store editors that, go in there and write, like you said, Matt, lengthy editorials that are on the home screen that feature apps that you might not know about. And you don't get that, I feel, on the Google App Store. At least I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Where they go in there. They feature it. They do nice graphics. They work with you. I feel like, they could reach out to some of the more, newer developers, when they submit apps, and review their apps to see if it's something that they could put on the home screen.
They've done some decent jobs with, showcasing some indie apps. I've read a few of those editorials. I don't usually read a whole lot of them, but there's a few indie games I've seen go up there from small name publishers that they do a good job of highlighting, like, hey, you need to check this developer out. They've made some quality work here.
And when they do that, and there's something that you said, Roy, about wanting to see the numbers, because I know this used to be true. I don't know if it's still true that Apple customers tend to pay more on average for apps or in-app purchases than Android customers do. So if Apple does do really good at fielding customers to your app, if you're a developer, then you have a higher chance of making a really good return on iOS versus Android, because the customers are just willing to spend more money because they might be comfortable.
Well, and that just warrants Apple's fee, even more so. If Apple's doing a much better job of bringing you in business, they get a finder's fee basically. And I think that warrants it. Once again, I still think 30% is a pretty steep price. I think that, if they lowered it down to 20-25%, I think we could meet in the middle and be a little bit more happier. Both the developers and Apple. They need to be willing to work together and have a good relationship in order to both, monetarily profit from it.
Right. I think especially since like the gaming industry on phones is as big as it is now, it's one of the biggest on cell phones, if not the biggest.
And it's growing daily, based on everything. So yeah, especially I think during the pandemic, more and more people have been playing games on their phone.
I just read an article about how the casual gaming scene, just like Scrabble and stuff like that, how much that has grown just in the last few months, both from App Store purchases and microtransactions. But like the casual games, and we're not even talking about the people who are hardcore playing like Fortnite and buying microtransactions for that, or people who are playing Pokemon Go and buying, the boxes and whatever they have in there. We're talking people who are playing Scrabble.
I'm actually really happy to hear that. It just makes me happy for some reason. Like, yeah, even Scrabble gets some too. Extra Scrabble.
My wife, she plays Yahtzee all the time on the phone. I won't lie, I played it with her too for a while too, but she's really invested in it. Like every time I see her, we're in the car, we're driving home or whatnot, and she's playing Yahtzee on her phone. And
go ahead.
No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
When I worked in Seattle, I used to play a lot of crosswords, like a lot of crosswords, and that was the thing I always did, just crosswords. It was a waste of time.
How would you feel if you heard that Apple removed crosswords from the App Store because they, I don't know, thought that they were being charged too much money for the service they were providing? Like your crosswords is just gone one day? I'd
have to go back to paper or to the newspapers and play.
Oh,
yeah, he'd go get a crossword book. Like you go into the magazine section and they got all those crosswords. You'd be picking those off and going through them. One of the games that I play on there is darts. There's a dart game on there that I like, and sometimes if I'm bored at night, very rare. I don't have it on my iPhone. I do have it on my iPad, but sometimes I'll play darts just because I did.
That's how you're getting better scores. You have a bigger screen.
I know, I do. You get a lot bigger screen on an iPad than you do on a thing. Which is, and going back to Tim's thing, when Microsoft decided that they aren't going to release their gaming system on the App Store because of App Store policies and guidelines and all that, I was really sad because I was a really big
xCloud system.
Yeah, I think wasn't that what it was called?
Their streaming service.
Yeah, yes. It was in beta. And then they announced that ending it, and probably large part because they can't do what they want to do on the App Store. So I was really disappointed because I was hoping Halo was going to come. Well, Halo would have come if it came out, and I really liked Halo. I was a big fan of Halo.
Yeah, me too. It's like one of the pillars of my gaming history. I like gaming history in general.
I mean, I wasn't very good at it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I sucked. I sucked at it, but I remember when I first started playing Halo on the Xbox, and I was playing on Xbox Live, and this kid came on, and like 13, 14-year-old kid came on here and shamed me and said that I was doing a horrible job, and I, should stop trying to play video games.
You always run into those kids who are just like ungodly above your
Oh my
level.
God, he totally shamed me. I was like, I felt so bad. Or maybe it was Call of Duty, one or the other, but I couldn't remember. But anyways, it was...
That's part of the reason why I don't play Fortnite is so that doesn't happen to me.
It's not fair either. I've been playing games my entire life. To have some 7-year-old come up and school me in a video game, it's not fair. I put in the time and effort.
So just since we're talking about games, who's still playing Pokemon Go?
I mean, I have it still installed in my phone.
Do you play it regularly like Roy does?
Only when I go on vacation.
Oh, no, I'm like once a day.
He's hardcore.
I play the different events, and I go shiny hunting. I'm all about the shinies.
He didn't... So Roy and I are both on the iOS 14 beta, and it doesn't run on it. And I downloaded the beta to Android 11 on my Pixel. And Roy was like, "We'll test Pokemon Go and see if it works, because I got to have one phone that it works on, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work on iOS 14 right now." And so I downloaded it to make sure it worked for him, because he wanted to upgrade to the Android 11 beta, but he wanted to make sure that it worked on it. So
it works, by the way.
It does. I know that because I tried it for him. I hadn't played Pokemon Go in years, and I'm trying to figure out my password for Pokemon Go, and finally I figured it out, and I made sure it worked. I even tossed some balls to make sure it didn't crash or anything. So
you don't know how disappointed I was to find out that Pokemon Go was not working on iOS 14, and all Niantic would say is that they only support stable platforms. And every year since Pokemon Go.
They say that every year, though. I mean,
it's worked every year. I remember the first year that it came out. It was what iOS was it? It was this was back in summer of 2016 when Pokemon Go came out, and I was running the beta when it came out, and it worked just fine.
I remember that actually.
It worked just fine every year. The only thing that wouldn't work the first year was the AR camera. It wouldn't work while iOS was in beta. So I was always wondering how people got it to work. I thought something was broken on my phone, but it works. And then all of a sudden I download the iOS 14 beta and it doesn't work. I actually had somebody tweet at me today because I shared a screenshot of the wallpaper that I had put on my phone that some guy had thrown up on Twitter today that I really liked. And some guy's like, oh, because he sees it on my home screen. He's like, oh, does Pokemon Go work on iOS 14 yet? And I'm like, no. He was not very happy.
So when you install that developer profile or that beta profile, and it says caution, only use on a device that is not your primary driver, and then you
reading the terms and conditions. Nobody reads that.
That's the thing. I mean, I don't care if my iPhone doesn't work. I actually have another one too that if it needed to.
The great thing about the iPhone is, and I go into the beta knowing full well that like battery life is going to suck. Things are probably going to be glitchy. At least for,
your keyboard's going to disappear.
Yeah, that's happened to me 3 times today. But I go to it full well knowing, that I can't experience that stuff. But I can always downgrade my phone if I want. I mean, I can't do that now because my watch has been upgraded, and if I downgrade my phone, my watch won't work. But in theory, if I hadn't upgraded my watch, I can always downgrade my phone whenever I want back to the stable version. It's not that big of a deal.
I'll tell you, this is the first time that I've used the Android beta, and I've had great success now that I got Bubbles to work. Bubbles are like
your Bubbles close on their own yet? Has that happened to you yet?
What are Bubbles? I'm unfamiliar with.
So you know what chat heads are in Messenger? Do you remember what chat heads are?
Oh yeah.
So it's exactly the same as chat heads. They're just called bubbles, and they work on any app that supports any app that support messaging could integrate into it.
Really?
So
It's
far, I've gotten
awesome,
it to work
Matt.
on Telegram, Google Messages. You have to be using the Google Messages, and Matt and I discovered that you have to be using the Google Messages beta right now in order for it to work. But it'll work on Facebook Messenger, Telegram, and Messages. But for some reason, when I'm using Facebook Messenger, because there's a couple people I talk to exclusively on Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but the chat heads, which you can't use chat heads anymore, it only will show up in bubbles. It will no longer show up as its own chat head. It has to be using Android's native bubble system in Android 11. But it'll close the Facebook Messenger chat heads. It won't close like Matt's chat bubble that I have. It won't close my friend Telegram bubble head. It will only close randomly some of the chat bubbles from Facebook Messenger.
So that's it's hard to see up there in the corner, but you see that little bubble right there.
Oh,
That's
yes,
like the
yes.
That's a chat head that me and Roy have, and then if you open it up, it shows all of our conversation.
Okay.
I mean, chat heads are convenient. You know, if you have a lot of people that you message a lot.
For the longest time, I had downloaded the beta because I really wanted chat heads because I talked to Roy on my Android most of the time. I don't really chat with anybody else on it, but like I wanted it for the chat head feature because I really like, I really like the chat heads in Messenger at the time, but I really wanted to use Bubbles. And so I downloaded it and I'm trying to get Bubbles to work on my thing. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time. Me and Roy were up like half the night trying to figure it out. And then I was like, well, fine, whatever. I threw my iPhone over in the counter and I went to bed. And then I wake up the next day and Roy sends me a message. I think I know what's the problem is. You need to be on the beta version of Messenger. And that was obviously the case. I looked through YouTube videos of it. I couldn't find it on YouTube.
That's surprising. Usually something's like as special as this new feature would have. Like,
and YouTube, one of the YouTube
everywhere.
videos, one of the YouTube videos pointed me to like the developer features, and I had to go into the developer features and I had to enable it, but that was during the preview version, not the beta versions. There was nothing I could find on the beta versions on how to enable Bubbles. Well, I mean, you could enable it, but I couldn't get them to work with Messenger for the longest time, and I finally figured it out. So,
stumbled across that answer when I was trying to figure out why Messages kept closing the chat head. Somebody suggested getting on the Facebook Messages beta, and I'm like, oh, I'm on the Messages beta for Google Messages. I wonder if that's the problem there for Matt. And sure enough, it worked.
And it's funny though, because me and Roy and I were then chatting because I got my bubbles to work, but my bubbles looked better than his because his were kind of half off the page. And so he was like, why does your bubbles so fully look nice and clean and neat? And then his is all like half cut off on the side of the page. And I was like, well, you could try like deleting the bubble. Like we tried everything. We couldn't get it. And it still doesn't fully show,
it's
right?
Still not working right.
And they're making you guys go through this constant tug of war for this one feature. Like, no, now yours is working. Now yours is working a little bit better than mine was working.
It's a beta. Whatever.
It's all part of beta.
That's true.
So, yeah. So anyway, so what phone are you? Just out of curiosity, what phone are you using now, Matt?
Oh, don't ask me that question.
Are you using a Pixel or a Nexus still?
So no, sadly, so I sold the Nexus that I bought from you to Joe, who you might remember.
Yep.
He used to work with us, and then so right now I'm using an iPhone 6s, a Samsung Galaxy S8, and an S8 Plus.
Well, that's
wow.
Still,
he's got as many phones as I do.
That's now.
If I hadn't left my Pixel, 2, like with my dad when we went up to go check out some property, then I would have another phone. I use the Plus for VR because I have a Samsung Gear VR headset, which I use to like watch YouTube and stuff. And then my daily driver is actually my iPhone right now. That's the one that has my SIM card.
You must have iMessages turned off then.
I must, because I think you guys.
It doesn't show up in blue when I texted you earlier. I was like,
Yeah,
It was
because
all
Roy
green.
liked something, and I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't know you could like things, so it sent it in
Yeah.
a separate message.
Yeah, basically just so you can actually put like a little like, and then it puts a thumbs up next to the thing, and it shows his little head or whatnot in group chats.
What incredible technology that I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm in like group chats, and sometimes I'll just see Sarah liked this message, and it'll just it'll respond back, and like
I have so many, like on my iPhone, like I have so many group threads going. Like our housekeeper, I have one going with her, and when she says she's coming over, all I do is tap the little like button.
Hold up, time
just
out,
so
time
she
out.
knows that I saw it.
You guys are in quarantine, and you still have a housekeeper.
Oh no!
Hey, it's an essential business, and it has been approved for phase 2. We're in phase 2.
That's not what I'm getting at. You guys are home all the time, and you still have a housekeeper.
It's not the.
I can understand if you guys were rarely ever home.
You know what? So here's the reason why we got it, because I was commuting every day, and my wife commuted every day too, and we would take the ferry. The ferry is about a half hour, 45-minute ferry ride each way. So you think about that. That's about an hour waiting time, about an hour and a half, fully for our day. When you work 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours on top of that, like you get home, you don't want to do work. Like you don't want to do that.
Yes, but you guys are home now.
I know, but I still don't want to do it.
All that else is beside the point.
I still don't want to clean my bathtub or my shower or
do you guys like lock yourself in a room while she's like or
no,
he's
I work in
walking
here.
around?
I work in here. I work in my office. My wife works in her office when she's home, and then when we're done, like when she's going to come in and clean our office, we just step out for a few minutes. She comes in and cleans, and then
awkward.
No, it's normal. Like our housekeeper is awesome. She also sits for our dog, house sits for us too when we go on vacation. Well, we're not going on vacation anytime soon, but like when we did go on vacation, she would come over and house sit for us and all that. So yeah. So anyways, but that was not the topic of this podcast. So let's move on. Tim, why don't you tell them what phone you're using?
I am using the OnePlus 7T. It's OnePlus's budget phone. I got it back January sometime, and then I also have a iPhone 8 for work. But yeah.
Nice. Roy, your turn.
I
already know you're using a Pixel.
Yeah.
What iPhone version are you using?
I still have an iPhone 10 that I am dying to upgrade because it will all of a sudden stop reading my SIM card, like spontaneously. So I generally use the Pixel most of the time because if I'm out and about and my SIM card stops working, what am I going to do? And it's not the SIM card. It's not the SIM tray. I've tried all of that. It is just a problem with the phone for whatever reason.
I've been telling him to trade this in for forever, and he's now about to do it when the new iPhone comes out. He got the Apple Card and everything. He's going to do the installment payments, just like I'm doing, through and get the Apple Care. Are you getting the Apple Care, or did you not decide to get the Apple Care yet?
Well, I mean, I'll probably get the Apple Care, but that can segue into that other article that I saw today that I found really interesting. The Verge reported that Apple is going to, for sure on the Macs, and they haven't, I guess, 100% decided on the iPhone. It's kind of going back and forth, but they're going to give you a year to buy Apple Care from data purchase instead of 90 days.
So that's not going to work on my MacBook over there that has a broken display.
Probably
that's
not.
From 2016.
But I mean, think about a whole year to buy an extended warranty is just unheard of in the industry.
Yeah.
Especially if they do it with the iPhone. I mean, you figure most people keep their phone anywhere from a year to 2 years. I mean, a lot of people are keeping them longer, but I feel in general, people upgrade and change their phones, within 2, maybe 3 years max. And to give you a whole year to change your mind to purchase an extended coverage is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I'm assuming that you probably have to take your device into an Apple store to have it examine before you
Oh,
buy
I'm
Apple
sure.
Care. But that is kind of really cool, and that's probably a good idea for people who, because a lot of people, job losses and everything right now, can't afford it right now, but they might be able to afford it then. Give them a chance to do it. So that's actually really cool of Apple to do, and again, unheard of.
Yeah,
I don't
that
think
adds
Google's
a lot of extra
doing
comfort
that.
to just buying an iPhone, especially in the pandemic. Like you said, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm using my iPhone 11 Pro Max. I have a iPhone XR that I use for development testing. Doesn't have a SIM card in it. And then I have my Pixel 4 XL. Yeah. So those are my two devices. Pretty much only chat with Roy on my Pixel, just because I don't want to have to give out my other number to everybody else. And then I have so many group threads, and everybody's on iPhones, and it's just it would be
They
really
got
sad.
you with that ecosystem.
Isn't it annoying to chat with people in group threads and they don't have iPhones?
I know, it's horrible. Our dog walker has an Android phone, and she's blue or green, and it drives me nuts sometimes. So
And iOS 14 makes group threads even better. Like you can respond to messages inside the thread, so it shows up kind of as its own
so you
little
can
sub-thread.
so iOS 14 will let you. It's just basically like you can call somebody out, and say, for example, I could say, "Hey, Roy, what are you doing tomorrow night?" in a group thread, and then it'll send him a notification if that's all he wants to get notifications on, is when people ask him a question. So it's really kind of cool on iOS 14. There's a lot of changes to messages in iOS 14, making it obviously the best messenger service out there, I think.
So I have a question based on what you just said, because it was kind of hard for me to follow, because that's all new to me. Are you saying that if you have like a thread of messages from your contacts in one group chat, you can reply to a specific message even if there are messages below it?
And it'll show it in line. It'll show it in line, just like Slack would, or Microsoft Teams, or any of those things. Like it's just a mention. Like you mention it, and then it also shows it in line too. So,
and not only that, but now you can search for things inside messages. So you want to look for, we were talking about Pokemon Go like 3 weeks ago, so I'm going to go and search for Pokemon Go, and bam.
That would help so much in mine and my wife's thread, because I'm always looking for the Netflix or Comcast
that is literally the first thing I thought about.
And so like I have to go out to all the messages, and I have to type in password, and like 4 threads will come up, between coworkers or whatnot, and I'll be asking for a password or something, and I'm like trying to figure out where this password is, and then I just have to scroll through and try and find it,
Do you guys keep your messages in like cloud service, whatever cloud service suits your preference, or when you switch phones, do you like delete messages? How do you guys store?
When for iMessage, when everything's uploaded, so you can turn on messages in the cloud, and I think it's end-to-end encryption. Don't quote me on that. It is, I think, but you can upload it to the cloud, and then if you get a new device or whatnot, it'll re-download all your messages, and it'll stay on all your devices: Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch. Yeah.
Interesting. Is that a free service? So you don't have to have
it's part of iCloud.
Oh, okay.
It's all part of their little package. What they call iCloud
ecosystem.
Yeah, it's all the ecosystem.
The walled garden.
I've said it a million times. Apple's best product's not their phone. It's not their iPad. It's not their computers. It's the ecosystem. It's the thing you should get for free.
You should go back into this chat after we end this, and put in that video that you sent me about the YouTuber who uses Google most of the time, and he just switched to the iPhone 11.
Oh yeah, the one where he talked about Apple's, like Instagram, and how there's a more refined experience,
and how it's just such a better experience on iPhone. Matt's like smiling over there, like,
I'm like, all right, that's cool for him.
He's a
I
YouTuber and he tries all of those chats out. So
He made a good point. Obviously both operating systems have so much to offer for their consumers, and at the end of the day, you're going to get the same thing out of it. It's going to get you the game you want, the app you want, the website you want,
unless it's
the
Fortnite.
services you want, unless it's Fortnite. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the same thing you want. It's just how you experience and how you get there. That's different. But this guy goes basically into, and I think it's Mr. Who's the Boss, the YouTuber that made the video, and he goes into how he has an iPhone, he has an Android. He's always used both because he's a tech reviewer on YouTube. And he goes into Instagram, and the Instagram experience on iPhone is so much better than it is on Android. And he breaks it down in the most simplest way. It's just that, Apple makes 3 iPhones a year. There are hundreds of Android phones made every single year with different specs and different cameras and different, skins over it. And there is no way that Instagram can make an app that is as tailored to a phone as they can Apple, because they have to give a one size fits all to Android.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just that theory behind that whole way of thinking as to why your experience on iPhone can be better than on Android. Sure, you're not going to get the customizability, but once you put aside that customizability, Apple puts so much more into the user experience because the way they control everything in-house, and you're going to get a consistent, great experience on Apple every time you use an Apple device because of that. And all you get on the Google side of things is the customizability. Look at what Apple does with its specs. We know that you look at the specs in a Samsung phone, a flagship Samsung phone, or even the OnePlus 8 Pro, and you look at the specs, if you could actually tear down what they mean for an A13 chip, and you realize that an iPhone doesn't quite have the high-end specs that an Android phone can have, but because the way they tailor their operating system to their own chip made, their chips that they make, and everything to their phone, and their battery management, it's just everything's tightly worked together with their products. I was playing Civ 6 on my MacBook that I got from Matt for $100. It's a 2014 MacBook Air. And if I download Civ 6 from Epic Games, which I got for free the week they were giving it away for free, I can't play it on the MacBook. The MacBook's not powerful enough. But if I get Civ 6 off of the Mac store, it works because of the way that Apple accelerates the graphics. And the version that's on the App Store works with Apple's hardware acceleration, because Apple can do more with their own hardware and give you the smoother experience and deliver more with less.
Interesting.
All you get with Google, to end my argument, all you get with Google in all reality is the customizability of Android. And not that that's not important. You make your phone yours. You truly make it yours. You cannot do that with Apple.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's what you care about, then that's what you'll get from Android. If you don't care about that, I promise you, if you give Apple a chance, you're probably going to have a better experience.
One thing. Go ahead.
No, well, that more or less that's the takeaway from what this guy says. Just he finds himself using Apple more and more because of that.
One of the things that I really like about Android is that, so here you can see my home screen. I don't have to reach to the freaking top of the screen. Like here, I can't just put my apps in the bottom 2 rows. Like I have to fill apps from the top, Now they did introduce widgets in 14, but like I can't one-handed.
Everything on my Pixel lives at the bottom. Everything at my
Same
Pixel
here.
lives at the
Same
bottom.
here. And that's my number one request feature from Apple, is that they finally just do that. That would make my iPhone experience complete in some ways.
That being an Android user, that I don't use my iPhone enough to even notice that I can't place my app icons where I want them to. That's very interesting, because with Android, I have
iOS 14, you'll be able to put widgets, and eventually, you could just put a widget in those top 2 rows up there. So you could put a widget that goes over that.
So you can push stuff down.
Yeah. So see how I have a widget here? It's hard to make out, but yeah. See, you could put widgets on the screen and stuff. So I'm assuming that depending on what the requirements are for widgets, I'm sure there's going to be a clear widget that comes out that just takes up space on the home screen. And there's some third-party abilities like, you can download blank spaces, for web apps, but it's kind of annoying to do. And when you move your wallpaper over, it kind of messes up the look of it. But yeah, so. Alrighty. Well, I think we've taken up enough time for tonight's podcast. I think that was very discussionful.
Oh,
Very good, very good discussion. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of the Epic Games lawsuit, and obviously, I'm going to be covering it because I like to see what's all going on into the Apple Store. So, so we'll check back on that and maybe do another update once we get closer to the lawsuit date and see what happens. So,
see if
anyways,
Fortnite can be freed.
Yeah, see if Fortnite returns or if Epic Games gets completely deleted off the app. Anyways, all right. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.